Curiously enough, I didn't meet Buzgalin neither in Russia nor in Austria, which is my country, but in Porto Alegre, Brazil. It was the time of the first World Social Forum where he participated. And he was the only Russian. No, there was another professor also there. We decided in the first World Social Forum to stage a European social forum. And of course, it was necessary at that time, as much as today, that Central and Eastern European countries get involved with the social forum, and so he was the reference point. And afterwards we came together in Russia and participated in demonstrations. I knew Alexander first as an activist and not so much as a scientist. It's a difficult question because he represented as a person various focus points for me. One, I just mentioned before, that he was an activist and a scientist. For me it is very important that people who are conceiving new ideas are also making the effort to realize this idea. And he was one of these people who combined theory and political practice. Secondly, what I found astonishing, being a European or even in other countries, that he did not deny, on the contrary, he stressed that he is a Marxist philosopher. For us it is impossible to conceive in Austria to have a chair at the university for Marxist political economy or something like that. But, and that is the originality of Buzgalin, he did not only conceive Marxism as an analytical tool, but also to combine it with his activities, and not only activities but also his horizon with a worldwide vision. You know that Marx aspires, although we admire very much the depth of his thought with regard to the non-industrial world, which was at the time called Third World, Latin America, Africa, Asia. There were some points like in Marxist thought about the Asian economic model of water management and so on. He was very fond of, but this was an exception. Marx lived in a colonized world, whilst Buzgalin was opposing this colonized world and evaluated the cultures of not philosophical Western-oriented thought. And he was very much interested in knowing what's happening and what are the cultures of other people. And since I am a social anthropologist, I could explain him with my knowledge of Latin America, because I was since '68 in Latin America living. I could explain him some of these connections which were there. Well, Karl Marx is popular in the sense that who doesn't know him? It's a figure like Jesus Christ, or even more than Hegel and other philosophers of his time. And there was immediately after the breakdown of the Soviet Union, there was and is still a time where you put Marx and Lenin in one package, and those who disagree say that has led to Stalinism, and put everything together without any knowledge of what Marx had thought. But those who had the opportunity to read and study Marx feel that the world more and more adjusts to the analytical ground of his thought. For instance, the industrial society produces modern slaves, and the capital owners are the ones who rule the world. That's happening now also. With an exception, I would say, according to my thought, that it is not only the antagonism between working class and capital owners, but it is the exclusion of, I would say, vast majorities of the world population from any economic system. I always say when feudalism reigned, in a certain way, it was also the responsibility of the owners, of the landowners, to look after the health of, or the most basic survivals of the peasants who were working for them. Exploited, but they were looking. Now they are left alone. Now nobody cares about it. That's to say, there is another dimension than the labor force, which we are struggling around, and that's why there are so many movements which are not only workers' movements. The workers' movements, as a matter of fact, are the least active nowadays of all the different movements. The women's movement is much more active, the peasants' movement is much more active, the trade unions are somehow, well, they do their job, but they have normally no revolutionary perspective. Nowadays, and I would say since 2008, where the economic crisis came about of the capital. Till now, it was it is extremely antagonistic, polarized, this whole process. And I think that produces its backlash also on the other side. I'm an optimist, and that's why I think that finally justice will prevail. How? That we are still discussing about strategies and how to but the base in the reality is given. It's already now. Look at the pharmaceutical industry, who has made, I don't know, billions of dollars because of the pandemic. Nowadays, we have the same thing with arms industry with regard to the war between Ukraine and Russia. There are so many examples that the concentration of capital is that intensive, especially in the financial market, that there must be an answer, and there is an answer. And I would like to tell you what the answer is. In Nepal, there happened something new in the process of the World Social Forum. I think it was the 16th World Social Forum which we organized. It is after a discussion which took about 10 years in the International Council. It was accepted that the World Social Forum is not only a meeting ground where people exchange and have their opinion and everybody continues with his bag, but that we can, in the name of the World Social Forum, give declarations, plan political actions on a world scale. And that is new. That has been for the first time in Nepal prepared previously by a meeting of the International Council in Tunis, where the Maghreb Mashrek Forum was developing a sort of a strategy of mediation, because I was part of, even one of the leaders of the opinion that we should do what finally was done, but there were also conservative forces who said, well, then everything, if you become a political organization, start to fight about ideologies and I don't know what. They were afraid that the good old social forum will lose its way. Now we proved that that was not the case. That is one point in Nepal. Another point in Nepal was that, of course, Gaza had a very prominent stake. There was one whole day about Gaza, with the outcome that there is the plan to make a worldwide mobilization on the day of the Nakba, which is 15th of May, all around the globe. But also there was a combination, especially very interesting, of the Nordic countries, you know, who are the vanguard, you can say, of the ecology movement, of the climate justice movement, and that had a big repercussion in a country like Nepal, where in the Himalaya, I don't know, the glaciers are breaking down, and they told me 1 million people are affected stay without water and things like that. These two elements, peace and climate justice, are just two coins of the same medal. And if you look at social justice, it has also something, because if there is no peace, you don't have a just social system, or not even an economic system which is somehow charged, let alone political system and so on. So that became very clear in the discussions in the different tents, and there was another thing, there was an extraordinary presence of women's movements. Whenever we go, it was organized in different tents. Altogether we were about 20,000 people, and in the women's tent there were always a couple of thousand women. That was something very spectacular. It's not that easy, because I think that if you speak about the global South, people are thinking, first of all, of BRICS, of Brazil, India, South Africa, China, and several other countries now in the meantime. And I'm a little afraid that we go from one exploitative system to another exploitative system. Because all the countries, perhaps with the exception of South Africa, they are not very democratic, let's say. And we are fighting and struggling for a democracy, even for another democracy, not only a democracy, a representative democracy where you vote every once in a while and then the governments do what they want, but in the individual decision making, and that was the idea from the very beginning in the social forum. Why have we chosen, or did the Brazilian choose Porto Alegre as the first meeting ground for the World Social Forum? Because they have invented a system which is called participatory budget. It's not the mayor of Porto Alegre with his local government who decides on projects, but they present the projects, and the people and peoples, because there are different peoples, will accept or not. For instance, I was there in a discussion about waste, what to do with the waste. And the mayor proposed there was competition between different enterprises, and the people rejected that. They said, listen, we are out of jobs. Why do you give to the enterprise so much money if we can do it? And especially the women, but also the men, created an original system which was not mechanic, not oriented by machines like others, like we have in Vienna, for instance, but with a maximum of employments created. I think this is an example. In the meantime, participatory budgets are in dozens, if not in hundreds, of countries, like of cities, like for instance also in Germany, in Hessen, they have accepted this way of thinking. I would put this question in other terms, because Millet is the result of a process. Like more than half of Europe is now on the verge to become extreme right in their governments as a result of the process. And now we ask what happened. And unfortunately, I must say, in Latin America, and that's not only Argentina, after the wave of the left, or in the 2000s, you know, in Bolivia and Ecuador, majority of the countries were ruled by left government. And they fell into a trap. They thought, now we are in government, and now we can be always the same. So, for instance, in Argentina, you had the Kirchners. The old Kirchner died, his wife Cristina took over, and she was involved in a series of corruption scandals, which made it for the Peronists, which has a long tradition, impossible to vote for them. And there came this payaso, as we say, this clown because he is a clown, of Millet, and with a couple of promises, with this strategy of the extreme right, they have everywhere one leader, and emotional and full of hatred, because the people felt betrayed by the left, and so they voted for him. They already know it's about, I don't know, many months it were the elections in Argentina, but now the people are paying the bill. And I mean, he does very crazy things, like all social security is gone. He wants to kick out everybody who is not part of his crew. That's to say, no, democracy is gone. And people start to feel that in the inflation rate, in the pockets, in the unemployment rate, and so on. But now we have to wait, according to the Constitution, for another, I don't know, 4 or 5 years, till have the next election. That will be a tragic thing. That's why There were countries like Venezuela Chavez brought it up first, that in the midterm people could vote if there are, I don't know, 100,000 people who claim for it, could vote against the president and kick the president out. Why wait 4 years and make people suffer if that is so? The situation in Argentina is really bad.
Мы благодарим за интервью Лео Габриэля. В его ответах мы подняли очень важные, на самом деле, проблемы, которые требуют еще более новых решений, чем те, которые предлагаются и самим Лео Габриэлем, и другими левыми активистами. И мы уверены, что наш дальнейший диалог будет продолжен, и, возможно, через несколько лет мы сможем смотреть на это интервью и пересмотреть наши взгляды с учетом того, что нам преподаст практика.